Hi everyone, it's Danny. Alrighty, so lately there has been an abundance of questions regarding Dendrobium nobile orchids, mainly because it is the season for them to lose their flowers and start new growth, and probably this is where problems start. So it is very normal at some point after a month or two of blooming for this Dendrobium to lose its flowers. That's pretty okay, don't worry about it. So for the person who asked me what's wrong with their Dendrobium, nothing is wrong, it's just the natural course. Orchids lose flowers eventually, they need to grow. Alrighty, so the main two diseases that Dendrobium nobiles are prone to, except pests and all of that, are root rot and pseudobulb rot. Now, root rot, as the name suggests, is the rotting of the roots. This can be caused to inadequate watering, but moreover, inadequate media. As I was saying in a previous video, for me, Dendrobium nobiles don't do so well in very fine medias like peat moss and sphagnum moss. So this is why I keep them in bark chips. They do like their water, but also they like their airiness. So I have the ventilation hose, I have the coarse media, and everything is okay with my Dendrobium nobiles. Now, when you're going to purchase a new Dendrobium nobile, most probably it will be potted in a very awkward media like peat moss or a very fine coconut husk. This can be quite detrimental in your environment, in a normal, let's say, home environment, which is not very hot, not very cool. It's pretty intermediate. Sometimes it can be more humid or drier, depends. But usually in a home, they don't really do so well in very fine media. Fine media actually suffocates the roots, also retains a lot of water, and this is the perfect combination for root rot. So this is the main cause of root rot with Dendrobium nobiles. A quick fix for this one is, of course, a repot of the orchid. If your orchid is new, just finished blooming, it is a perfect time to repot it. Just remove all the old media, never reuse it again, and use fresh media. For me, as I told you, bark chips are splendid for Dendrobium nobiles. If, however, you like something else, maybe a mixture of bark and maybe just a little bit of sphagnum moss, then use that. But if you're a beginner, stick with bark. It will give you less headaches. Now, when you're gonna repot your orchid, you need to cut away all the dead roots. And I have a video on repotting this guy, so if you didn't watch it, I'll add an annotation somewhere here, also in the description of this video, so you see how I go about it. Now, this orchid was potted in a really bad media, so I had to cut away a lot of the roots. As a result, these canes started to shrivel. Shriveling of the canes means only one thing, dehydration. But dehydration can be caused either by inappropriate watering, so maybe you're not watering enough your orchid, but most probably it's due to the lack of roots. Because the orchid doesn't have enough roots, it cannot absorb water, thus the dehydration of the orchid. If you have a Dendrobium nobile which had root rot and you are forced to cut away all of the dead roots, which were the main part of the root system, you will have shriveled pseudobulbs. So don't worry about that. It will fix itself in a few months as new growth starts to appear, usually from the base, as you can see, and the new root system will be produced. Now, this new root system will actually feed the entire orchid. So in a few months' time, these pseudobulbs will become plump again. Maybe not as shiny and nice as in the beginning, but definitely a lot better. Mine is in the process of healing right now. It is just producing the new root system, and in time you will see it will actually look much better than this. So in the case of root rot, most often than not, it is a media problem. If the media is too suffocating, just repot the orchid, use a loose media like I have, provide a lot of ventilation, and wait for the new root system to be produced. Luckily, this orchid is quite willing to produce roots, so I wouldn't really worry about it. Also, the cane do retain a lot of energy for new growth to be produced, so most of the times root rot is not really so dramatic. Dendrobium nobiles are very adapted to all sorts of catastrophes, and they will usually sprout new growth pretty fast. Okay, the second main disease that a Dendrobium nobile can have is pseudobulb rot. This particular orchid did have a rotten pseudobulb. If you remember, when I purchased it, it was potted in the awful media, of course, but also it had a layer of Spanish moss on top, which retained a lot of water. So actually, what you see here, this new growth, used to be a different pseudobulb, which rotted, and I was forced to remove it. So what I did was I sprayed hydrogen peroxide in the wound, in the portion that was actually rotting, and then I just left it alone. What this orchid did was to produce another pseudobulb right in the place of the old one. So this can happen with Dendrobium nobiles. Another thing that can happen with a Dendrobium nobile that lost one of its growth is to produce another growth from one of the nodes. Now, Dendrobium nobiles are full of eyes or nodes, so it's not like Cattleya orchids, which are limited to 2 or 3 or maybe 4 nodes. They have nodes all along the canes. So if, let's say, this new growth rotted, this orchid can produce another new growth from the next node. Now I'll try to show you the nodes. So let's presume that this is a mature growth. If one of the growths from the base rots, it can produce a new growth from here, or from here, or from here, and so on along the cane. So if you lose one of the new growths at the base, don't worry about it. Try to sterilize the wound as best as you can. I usually use hydrogen peroxide. Sometimes I pour some cinnamon dust as well, and most probably this orchid will find another available node to produce a new keiki. Now, a pseudobulb can get infected due to other causes as well. Let's say you managed to cut one of the pseudobulbs or remove one keiki and you actually left a big wound on the pseudobulb. That can get infected really, really easy. And I had a case last summer, which unfortunately I didn't film because I wasn't here all the time. But my orchid friend gave me 2 canes from her Dendrobium nobile. It was a yellow one. And what happened was the wound got so infected that it actually rotted the whole pseudobulb so fast that I couldn't really do anything. It also infected the pseudobulb of the mother plant, so my friend's orchid, and she really hassled to save it. In this case, you need to remove the affected portions because they will not come back. A rotten pseudobulb, which is very mushy, cannot be saved, so you need to discard it actually and sterilize the wounds. So when you are cutting or making any type of wound on a Dendrobium nobile cane, sterilize it very well. I will actually spray hydrogen peroxide on the wound, and then after a minute or so I would dry it up with a paper napkin and then apply cinnamon dust, which actually dries and heals the wounds very fast. Now, one of my viewers actually had a bad case with the same Dendrobium. This is the Aurora Dendrobium, if you remember it. Most probably she purchased it from the same place and had the same issues like I did with the bad media and also the Spanish moss on top, which managed to rot the base of the pseudobulbs. So she had to cut away a lot of the pseudobulbs in order to save the mother plant. And I also have some pictures from my viewer, from Anna. She allowed me to use them for this video, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, her plant had a lot of pseudobulbs, and she was wondering if she could save the pseudobulbs that she cut. Some of them were mature, some of them were not mature. And I told her that yes, because this orchid has a lot of eyes and a lot of nodes, it can actually produce new babies as it grows. But first, you kind of need to sterilize that really ugly and big wound. Now, for this cut cane to be able to produce keikis, it needs a lot of moisture. So for this reason, I did suggest to her to keep it in a sort of a vase or a glass with some water or wet sphagnum moss at the bottom to provide that moisture. But what about the wound? Because it is very big and it can get very infected. Well, the perfect way to seal it off, in my opinion, is with wax, and I have an example. So this is a flower spike, but just imagine this is a cane of a Dendrobium nobile. Now, at the base, you will have the wound, and to completely seal it off and sterilize it, you can use hot wax. And I have here a little candle, like so. If you let it burn for a few minutes, you will have a layer of melted wax on the top. So the way to do it, after you make sure that you don't burn yourself, is to dip the cane with the base just a little bit on the hot wax. You have to go a few millimeters, not too much. And then pull it out, and as you can see, it will dry off and the wax will solidify. Now, this is a perfect seal for a Dendrobium cane. And I actually had a case. I purchased a Dendrobium which had some cut canes, and they were sealed off with wax like this. And they didn't get infected and everything was fine. So imagine this is your Dendrobium cane, and now it's sealed off, and you can actually now place it in a vase or a glass or wherever you want to keep it to add that moisture and to promote some root growth. But this is the way you would seal off perfectly any type of cut major wound on a Dendrobium cane. Of course, if your wound is situated on the mother cane, you cannot really wax it like this. Maybe you can go in with a Q-tip or something and try to wax it, but it's not gonna hold very well. I tried it. So the best way to heal a wound on a cane is to spray it a little bit with hydrogen peroxide, dry it very well, and then use a Q-tip and apply cinnamon powder directly on the wound. Don't go crazy with cinnamon. Don't let it fall to the roots and everywhere. Don't bathe your orchid in cinnamon. Just apply the cinnamon powder only on that wound. The cinnamon dries very, very well, and if used incorrectly, can actually do more damage because it can dry and dehydrate flower spikes and canes and roots and all of that. So only apply it on the wound. And this is pretty much how you would seal a wound on a Dendrobium nobile cane. Now, these are the two major diseases that a Dendrobium nobile can have, apart from pests and all of that, but I will not go into that. So in most cases, rotting either of the root system, either of the cane, will actually lead you to a Dendrobium nobile's demise. But other than that, it's really not prone to anything major. So to avoid all these things, just make sure your orchid is very well ventilated. Airy media, airy pot, and also airy environment will most probably keep you safe from all of these nuisances. And if you ever have to make a wound on a Dendrobium nobile, just make sure you sterilize it so you don't end up with a rotting pseudobulb, which can actually take over the plant in a matter of days. So okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have further questions for me, or you didn't understand something, I didn't explain it well, just leave me a comment down below and I will get back to you. Also, if you want to see more videos from me on orchids, just subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also visit orchidnature.com, which is my website, and it has a lot of information on orchids, also a forum, and there will be a lot more information to come because I'm spicing it up a bit. You will see what I mean in the following weeks. Alrighty, so I'll see you next time. Bye!